All right. So, how's everyone's practice going? Any questions?
Practice, I'd be interested in what you to say about the Angelo retreat, and particularly you mentioned that you did circling, and I was wondering, like, with him.
Joe, give me a second. I want you to say that again. I'm just gonna disconnect the headphones here. Could you ask that again, Joe?
Let me know. Yeah. So I think what I said was, yeah, just curious to hear any feedback. I mean, God, what did I say? I was asking about the Angelo retreat, just if anything you felt like sharing anything from that, but particularly like you mentioned that you did circling, and I'm curious within that context when circling happens, like what was it like?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I've never done it before. So the retreat wasn't much of a retreat for me though. It was just work, you know. So I was doing Q&As for like 2 hours a day, the whole retreat. So then the time zone differences, I didn't really get to sit much because I'd stay up too late. So then during his like guided meditations in the morning, I just fall asleep. But it was an interesting retreat. He has this really big emphasis on shadow work, you know. So people's stuff that comes up as a result of awakening, but even besides awakening. So yeah, the circling that he does. So I guess circling is some kind of either it's a trauma release modality or it's some way that trauma gets expressed. And it's based on a documentary that was done by these guys that were doing this type of practice or modality in the U.S. prison system. And the documentary is called The Work. And how it's structured is you have this circle of, you know, it looks like between 8 and 12 people. And there's a kind of initiation process into that. I guess it's based on the hero's journey. So there is this, you come to a door and everyone's at the door, and then you're basically taken through an area in the dark where you can't see anything. And right then and there, it was like the healing already started. As soon as I couldn't see what was happening and people were like shifting me around, then, you know, my inner eye or my mind's eye became pretty activated. And then, you know, before you know it, you're in a circle and they turn the lights on and you're seated around these people. And there's an invocation of the 4 archetypes. I think it's magician, lover, warrior, and I can't recall the 4th one at the moment, but yeah, these 4 archetypes are called in. It's very yeah, right. It's very it feels very ancient, that whole procedure. And then people, well, it depends on the person in the circle. I mean, some people were not really able to open up, or it was difficult for them. And then for other people, you're being a witness and you're watching them usually talk about the most horrendous thing that has ever happened to them. So that's pretty powerful. Yeah. So for the circling, because Angelo only does it once and it's at the end of the retreat, it's via lottery system. So like a bunch of people sign up for it, but then only a few get picked. This is a big retreat. There's like 170 people. So out of 170 people, 12 get the lottery for the or get picked out of the lottery. And yeah, it's very powerful in that it was interesting because it was a lottery system, but everyone had similar stuff that they were sharing or that they were dealing with. In my case, there was a guy who whose father died at an even earlier age than when I was, and he was just like on the floor screaming. And for a second, I couldn't tell if he was screaming or if I was screaming. So it was a very deep, cathartic experience for some people. Some people weren't really able to open up or let go, but there's something about sharing something that deep, in front of a circle of people. And Angela was the facilitator, and a nun called Isha, and they would ask questions, about what it was that you were sharing, or yeah, like asking the person to go deeper, or it would help them open up into those feelings. And yeah, it was interesting and very powerful. I mean, for me, I talked about watching my dad pass away, and yeah, just how horrible that that day was, and the conversations I had with people. And yeah, it was a pretty brutal experience. I hadn't shared like the full details of all of those things in a long time. I think the last time I did too, it was probably like in a Zoom class or something, so it wasn't like in a setting of sharing that in a way to actually feel all of the emotions. So this was different. I was like, sobbing the whole time, sharing this one with them. And yeah, it was powerful. I would say that like people that would go up on stage and ask him questions, like half of them were awakening questions, and then the other half were just, yeah, just people asking or sharing things about uh, their trauma or things that they endured. I mean, probably half of the people that would go on stage would end up crying about something. And even for me at the last, I don't know, it was the morning of the last day or something, I was just meditating in this. One of the guys from the Q&As, who was a doctor, he just came up to me and said, "Hey, I need a second with you." And he just broke down, started sobbing, and was remembering when he lost his mother as a kid. So there was a lot of that. Yeah. So I highly recommend circling. Those guys do it in San Francisco, like 2-day events where they just do this for 2 days. And there's one at the end of January and then another one in April. So I'm probably gonna do the one in April. Actually, I'm definitely gonna do the one in April. If I'm back in the U.S. Yeah. Yeah. So it just depends. Yeah. Even the one in January, I would do if I had the chance to. So it's like, I don't know, $650 for 2 days, which is totally worth it. So
I'm glad I asked because I just did what I think was circling for the very first time, like a couple of weeks ago now, and it blew me away. But it sounds nothing like what you just described. And maybe we just didn't go deep enough. So I'm I'm stoked to have heard this. It's like, I know I want to know more. I mean, what we did was still super powerful. Yeah, and I was just wondering, okay, within the context of a Angelo DeLulo retreat, what does circling look like? And it's amazing to hear, like, yeah, just how much shadow work was happening. And I think that's part of what I love about Angelo. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
it's embraced. And maybe that's what, I get a sense that that's kind of what is necessary at this point in time. It seems like there's a shit ton of shadow stuff that just has to come out if anyone's going to stay sustainably awake to some degree. It's just going to keep coming up and coming up and coming up. So yeah, thanks for describing it.
So yeah, because I think circling is a general term or something. Because I remember meeting a guy in Thailand too, and he did some circling thing with me, and it was just like we kind of just sat and talked, and it wasn't the same as this. This was like some tribal shit, you know. That's basically how it felt. There was really a clear demarcation into a sacred space. The opening of that container, and I think that ritualistic aspect of invoking the 4 archetypes and then invoking the 4 elements as well, it added this whole kind of, yeah, it just added something to it that made it something different than like a group therapy session. That was not a group therapy session, you know. That was something else. Yeah, in group therapy sessions, people talk and it's circular and it drives you nuts and you want to get the hell out of there. And this was more like you're in a very sacred space and you're being a witness. Like you have a role as a witness in that place, in that space, and that's very unique. So yeah, and it's interesting because you feel resonance with like particular people in there, and there were things that were part of your story that affected that person, and parts of their story that affected you specifically, and yeah, that was unique about it. Of course, after this you know, this young man, I don't know how young he is. He's probably like, you know, late 20s or something, but he was the one who was lost his dad when he was 9, and you know, I just went up to him afterwards and I said that his dad would be proud of him for making a man out of himself, and yeah, and for making it here to a retreat being dedicated to something like this. So yeah, so that was that. So I can share that. I'll share that in the Discord and in the WhatsApp and stuff. The documentary. I haven't watched it, but I've heard really good things about it, and it's interesting because it's not like some, you know, it doesn't seem like they're doing any special technique particularly, but I did notice that when someone started to have a release, they would bring a pillow or some kind of object, and they would encourage the person to beat it, like to start to hit the pillow or whatever it was. And you know, one person, like, I mean, I thought she was gonna break her wrist hitting that pillow, and then she just crawled into the fetal position and just sobbed for like 20 minutes, just screaming. So it's deep stuff. So they had the container, and they had the kind of training to know that that's where it was going. So that's one thing that that was unique in that regard. It's like they were leading each person like very deep into that space of pain. Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, I have a question about Bob Monroe's conversion box. Can we address it here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I recently heard him talking about a situation where he was out of body and he found himself inside a box. box or inside a dark space with four walls. And later he learned that his students or somebody had put him in the conversion box for whatever reason. I'm assuming it was because of the same reason that I've done it in the past to get that person or that situation off my mind. And now I'm wondering if that's a bad idea. Because, like, well, you know, I never heard him specifically say anything but, you know, problems and issues. But some people are problems. And I do toss them in there. And maybe that's a bad thing. And sometimes I put people in there just because my heart is heavy and I can't deal with that at the moment. And I just need to free myself. And I don't want to inadvertently. What's the deal? What are we supposed to be doing?
Well, so there's a helicopter going over. So in Bob's case with the energy conversion box, I mean that may have been something he was experiencing because multiple people were putting him in the conversion box, but I'm not sure why, you know, that would have been a thing. But if you're worried about that, you could just like take the person out of the energy conversion box at the end of the exercise. Just put them in there during the exercise at the beginning of the hemisync, and then take them out of the energy conversion box.
Just remember,
Yeah.
set them free.
Yeah, set them free, exactly.
It's funny, but it's also like it scared me.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's powerful. I didn't know it was that powerful though.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the person too. Bob's very sensitive, so he would pick up on something like that. But maybe if it was any of us, we might not notice it. So yeah. So just remember, if you put a person in your energy conversion box, just take them out at the end. Set them free.
May I ask a follow-up
Yeah, sure, Dimitri.
regarding
Are you saying something? I think you're muted for some reason. Okay. Yeah, your audio went out. In the meantime, OBE class this Saturday will not be in session because the Open Circle Sangha in the Bay Area is hosting a Zoom session for me to speak to their Sangha. So everyone's invited to that. I shared the link. I'll share the link in Discord. I'll share it right after this class. Yeah, so that's going to be at 9 a.m. on Saturday. So for OBE class this week, no class on Saturday, and then next Saturday we'll resume as usual. But yeah, if you're able to make the Open Circle Sangha meet, I recommend it. The title of the workshop is "How Do I Get Back There? A Post-Awakening Trap." a common post-awakening trap. You know, it was I want to get back there. A common post-awakening trap. So that'll be the subject at the Open Circle Sangha. So if anyone wants to join, be happy to see all of you there.
Is it better now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry. I was just stupid. I accidentally pressed the mute button and I didn't notice because my app was not open. My bad. So there is this development in like a dream recall. When I just started, I probably could recall some fractals of the dreams, some very short partitions. But recently it became more like a movie, like a full length, 1 hour 30 minutes. I can remember quite
Wow.
far back. Like
That's a lot.
I literally wake up and like there is a movie in my head. Like I can roll it back, rewind, check any details I want and stuff like that. But with this came a very interesting development of like in this week and last week there were a few dreams where dream characters started to attack me. Like it never happened before. It was always like me watching the dream and sort of, yeah, I would do some mundane things like going grocery shopping, doing some work, whatever, right? But it was never aggressive or negative. But in these dreams, like I was arrested by a cop and the cop started just pounding on me and I woke up because of this, like he was just like smashing me. He started to hit my back and I just like, oh my God, and I woke up immediately. And the next dream was like all the characters were super aggressive and they were like saying all the like curse words at me and like specifically at me. That was so weird. Like the whole dream was directed at me and sort of in a very aggressive way. A pretty long dream. So is this some kind of residue of like shadow work, some kind of baggage inside my mind which is slowly kind of surfacing, or what is this?
I think so. I think because your dream recall has has increased to such a high degree, it's not that now you're having these dreams and it's spontaneous. Likely you've been having dreams like this, but you just don't recall them because the dream recall was never so prolific like it is at this point. So yeah, there's a book by Robert Wagner called, I'll send it to you, but it's a book about lucid dreaming where he talks about specifically contact with dream characters. And
Okay.
yeah, so that's a good resource. But from my experience with it, what I found in the exploration of the dreamscape was that, for example, I was introduced to specific functions in consciousness or in the psychology that were represented by particular dream characters or groups of dream characters. So that could be something that you're now, brushing up against. Like I was introduced to a group of hunters in a dream, and a voice actually said, "This is your courage." Like these beings here. This is your courage. And then another time in the later in that dream, I think I was brought to a car manufacturing plant, and a being there told me, "This is your emotional processing center." So these different functions in the psyche appear, they manifest in intelligible and understandable forms, or forms that we can interact with in the dreamscape. So part of what likely will open up for you is when you begin to have more lucidity in the dreams. It's these things that you're touching and having experiences with now that you'll begin to have like actual lucid contact with. So in my case, I was pulled out of an OBE actually, or I mean, the experience began out of body, like floating above the earth. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard me talk about this, but I know a couple people in here have heard me share this story. I was floating above the earth, and there was, like, I was looking at myself from a distant vantage point, and there was an angel on my right shoulder, a small one, and then a demon on the left. And a voice said, "The angel on your right shoulder is the angel of the higher self. The demon on the left shoulder is the shadow, which is comprised of several inner demon personalities." And then there was a zoom in on the demon on the left. And there was a full confrontation. This all happened like with total lucidity, right? It was as real as this. There was an actual confrontation with the shadow. Rudolf Steiner calls it the dweller on the threshold. And this, I didn't know that Steiner wrote about this or that people had written about this before, but the shadow looks like you, apparently. And in my case, it did. The shadow has it looks like you, but in my case, it was older. You know, it had a beard of tentacles and fire in its eyes. And when I gazed into its eyes, it transported me to another reality. And so I was phased to a dreamscape, and in that there were these tentacles that covered the entirety of a floor. Tentacles, but also body parts that were. It was a pretty gruesome scene, anyways. And the voice just said, "This is your lust." You know, these body parts were like engaging in intercourse or whatever. And yeah, the voice said, "This is your lust." Another time, also, I had contact from an OBE with anger. So it started in an OBE and then it phased into the dreamscape for a confrontation with a particular part of the psyche. And in that case, it was anger, and it was this blue, faceless alien. And there were all these little other aliens around him, like different colors, and he was screaming at all of them, and very, very aggressive and violent, actually. So yeah, so the types of confrontations that you're describing, they are they're not unusual for people doing this type of work. Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking something in this sort of type of answer, but I was not sure, so I wanted to make sure with you. And
Yeah.
the second thing is, when I wake up, I can notice a lot of just very strange oddities in a dream, like something you described before. Like you said, you were standing on a fireman's ladder, right? A fire truck ladder, and the ladder was made of glass. Like these kind of ridiculous things, and I can't understand. I notice so many of them when I wake up. I guess the logical part of the brain fires up and I can see them, but in a dream, probably that part is sleeping. I can see so many weird things. How come I don't perceive them in a dream? They are ridiculous. Why in a dream they seem normal, but then when I wake up, I'm like, that is just nonsense. Like it's impossible. Why it's so weird.
Yeah, I think.
So is it like a lack of lucidity or something? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I think what's happening is that you have less. You know, like in dreams, you can really go along with whatever's happening, but you rarely engage in a dream, for example, in any kind of like complex or computational thinking or processing. You know, when was the last time you had a dream where you were trying to figure out what you needed to do the next day, or you were planning some event, or trying to do some kind of creative thing? Dreams are they're like these movies that unfold. So they often don't possess the same degree of complexity of thought, or these things are a characteristic of the waking state. So because there's a reduction, and it could be related to brain waves, I'm not sure exactly, brain waves and chemicals, right? It's likely that, I mean, we know that when you're observing someone in sleep, they have far less beta activity in their brain than they do when they're in the waking state. And beta waves are related to those complex cognitive functions. So it could be something like that. Like because you're in a deep delta state, and the chemicals are different, that could be responsible for why you're not recognizing anomalies and all kinds of inconsistencies in the dream. It's also just that it's not something that dream consciousness is used to doing. That's another thing too. I mean, if it was habituated in your dream consciousness to look for anomalies, then they would occur more often. It's like reality checking, you know, when you're doing this many times during the day, you're asking yourself if you're dreaming, and then you check to see if if the lines on your hands move. That creates a kind of habituation that then is reenacted while you're dreaming. So it's actually a technique to look for anomalies in the waking state, and to get used to do it to such an extent that it becomes second nature, and then you find yourself doing it in a dream. So it's a kind of reality check, essentially, but specifically that there's the looking for anomalies or strangeness.
So these are the techniques to increase lucidity, basically, in my case?
Yeah, increase
Like reality checks or looking for oddities in real life, right?
yeah, increase the onset, the frequency of lucidity.
Okay. Are
Are
there any other suggestions to increase lucidity or is there actually a need to increase anything? Because I feel like everything is unfolding exactly the same as supposed to unfold. And then like my intention to speed it up or in some way change it is just slowing down the process actually.
Yeah, if follow your intuition and your guidance on it, because it's different for each person. Like for me, if I don't do anything active in regard to lucid dreaming or out of body, it won't happen unless I'm meditating a lot. Like if I'm on a retreat and I'm entering cessation, of course, it's out of body experiences galore, right? But outside of that, that level of samadhi and amount of meditation that's happening in that, yeah, they're not particularly natural for me. So like, they were when I was a kid though, or at least when I was younger. But yeah, so what was it, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, before the Angelo retreat, I think I did wake back to bed. Did wake back to bed 3 times in a week. So it was like Monday, woke up at 4:30 a.m., moved to another area of the room, fell asleep there. And then the next day skipped it, and then the next day did it again. So one of the things that you can do to natural way to increase the frequency of lucidity is to do wake back to bed. You wake up after 4.5 hours or 5 hours, and then you go back to sleep somewhere other than where you were just sleeping. So if you're sleeping in your bed, you pull out a yoga mat in some other part of the room and you sleep there. The reason that is very effective is because since you're not sleeping in the place that your body is used to sleeping, there's a particular level of alertness that is present. It's almost like the organism senses that it's not entirely safe, like it's kind of there's something unusual going on. So that alertness translates to lucidity in the dreamscape. If any of you have noticed, because I've noticed this with me very, very particularly, jet lag and traveling causes tons of lucid dreams and out-of-body phenomena. And the reason it does is because when you're sleeping in hotels and the sleep schedule's off and you're sleeping in unfamiliar places, you're not getting sleep that's as deep. So if you're not getting sleep that's as deep, you have more presence of some degree of a greater degree of the conscious mind, and therefore a higher possibility of lucidity.
Okay. And so can I consider dreaming as a sort of way to know myself?
Absolutely.
Because I
absolutely.
I face my inner
demons,
consciousness, inner psyche.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Dream work, whether it's dream work, lucid dreaming, or out of body experience, these are all keys for greater understanding of not only the astral plane or mechanics of life and death, but really just greater insight into your own mind. When you're in a dream, you're literally interacting with the fabric of your psyche. I mean, the dreamscape is, so this is an interesting thing to consider too. It didn't, this was something that never occurred to me actually. It didn't, it just never was something that I really grasped or considered until probably 3 years ago. But I noticed that the succession of mental images in thought is continuous and spontaneous. It's actually always happening. It's just that our attention gets funneled into our physical body perceptions, and we just focus on whatever it is that we're doing. So we don't notice that there's actually this stream of mental pictures, more or less all the time. So if you were to notice it, like direct your attention at it, take the stream of mental pictures as your meditation object, you find that it's just one picture after another, one picture after another, one picture after another, one picture after another. It's unbroken. It doesn't stop. It only stops if you enter some kind of special state like a jhana, or you get really, really quiet. So then the stream of mental pictures is less, the frequency and speed of those pictures is reduced, right? But this whole stream of mental pictures is happening by itself. This stream of mental pictures is the dreaming. It is the dreaming. And it's happening in the waking state. So when you go to sleep, all that's happening is that because the body has been disconnected from, or the mind, the consciousness has been disconnected from the body perceptions, what happens is that attention and the psyche then inhabits these mental pictures and lives out dramas within them. And that's what dreaming is. Part of what helped me understand this was that I noticed that if I was meditating and I was a little sleepy while meditating, I would experience entering a dream, hypnagogia essentially, entering a dream to a very minor extent while still having physical body perceptions. And I was like, oh, so basically if enough of the physical body perception is reduced, then the vividness of the mental pictures becomes enhanced to such an extent that you actually inhabit them. And when you inhabit them, you wander into a dream. And there's, and I mean, I haven't tested this in a dream, but I know that in a dream I've experienced the ability to think verbally, but I've never looked at a stream of mental pictures while inside a dream. I mean, it's probably possible, but I've never done it. But for sure, there's mental thought while in a dream. So yeah, so the dreaming is always happening. So one way to activate your capacity to enter lucid dreams or to have more lucid dreams, one thing that you can do is specifically meditation that is called thought witnessing. Hey man, I can hear you, guys. Anyways, yes, we can hear you from there. Okay, so thought witnessing, you're just directing attention specifically at this unbroken continuation of mental pictures. And that is exactly what becomes very vivid in hypnagogia. So like as you're falling asleep and you begin to lose consciousness and the dreamscape appears, it's these hypnagogic mental images that are very trippy and hyper realistic that start to come up. But the question that we're faced with is like, why can't I perceive them? I can perceive them for a few seconds and then I blip out. It's because your mind has not been oriented, it hasn't been directed, it hasn't been habituated at perceiving that type of data or that specific content. So if you were to do thought witnessing as a practice, and I'm sorry, you know, everyone's already doing lots of practices in my classes, so I'm not trying to like throw another thing on you. But if you wanted, for example, to really open the door of hypnagogia in the OBE cohort or in your practice, it would be to do specifically thought witnessing as a meditation. So it means you're just looking at the mental pictures. And the more that your mind is habituated to that, then the more it's able to observe mental pictures as you fall asleep. If you're able to observe mental pictures as you fall asleep, you will be able to enter the dreamscape and wake back to bed quite easily.
So right now I'm stuck in this stage where I get to the point where I have just a light show in front of my eyes. So I kind of, I got to, what is it, the week 20, I forgot, in a book, week 20, not weekday, sorry, day 26 maybe. They
Good,
started to
good,
introduce how to get into like what is it? Not dreaming, like I forgot the term. Like a deep state of trance. All right, there you go, into a trance, and they use this ladder. They introduce the elevator, the ladder, and even try the rope, and it seemed to be very effective to get into this trance state. I can actually feel all of this movement down, and
Yeah,
I
and
can-
getting
my
deep,
whole body
deep
just
into
collapsed.
relaxation.
Well, that is so useful, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. So it just speeds up the whole process for me. But then I get into this stage where like it's just dark, and I just start to see this like fireworks. It's just fireworks for literally 30 minutes and nothing's happening.
Oh,
And I
well,
just get bored because it's so long, and I was like, Jesus.
the thing that you're supposed to do at that point, and maybe I didn't clarify this for you, or maybe it's the first time I've heard it, I don't know. When you start to experience hypnagogia, like, yeah, you can just lay there and watch it for however long, but in order to go from watching the hypnagogia to entering the dreamscape, you need to focus on some aspect of the hypnagogia.
Oh, so choose a light and
Yeah.
literally stare at it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see.
choose a light, place your attention on it, and phoom, you'll get pulled. You'll get sucked
All
into
right.
the dreamscape.
Okay, let me try it. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, thank you. You gave a lot of information. Let me digest all of that and try it.
You know, so to
That's a lot.
reiterate and explain this again, just to be clear, if you're experiencing hypnagogia, which is these hyperreal mental pictures, either at the beginning of the night as you're falling asleep or after you've done wake back to bed, what you do to shift from observing the hypnagogia to entering the dreamscape is you take a specific hypnagogic image or a piece of an image, focus on that, and then you'll be drawn into the dreamscape. Why does that work? I don't know, but it works. It's almost like the hypnagogic images are the veil. They're literally the veil between the waking state and the dream state. And as soon as you touch that veil with your attention, instead of having the position of observing it from back here, you have to touch the veil to pass through it. So you touch any of the hypnagogic images and it'll open up into something that takes you into the dreamscape. And at that point, you're having a wake-induced lucid dream, so you might fall into the dream, you might, fall through the bed, or, I remember my first wake-induced lucid dream, what happened was, I did something. I focused on some part of the hypnagogic experience, and then it opened up into a screen. And I stayed with that screen, and that screen took me through this whole roller coaster thing, and then suddenly I was in the dreamscape. So there is a transition into the dream from the screen of hypnagogia. And to access that transition, like accessing that tunnel into the dreamscape, you have to actually touch and follow one of the hypnagogic images.
Okay, got it.
That's how you do it.
All right, let me try it out, and then I will get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Thank you for your answers.
Yeah, you got it. All right, everybody. So usually we go longer with these, but I have to cut this one short tonight. Yeah, the meditation was great, and of course, thank all of you for your questions. And tomorrow morning we have the Bardos class. Saturday open circle sangha, and then Sunday we have our normal jhanas class. So thanks for coming, everybody. See all of you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.